Hello, everybody on YouTube and starting now Twitch. Anytime I do this, I'm going to broadcast it on Twitch because honestly, there's no reason for me not to. But yeah, we are going to be
There we go.
going through the Batman. If you have not seen it, do not watch this. Or if you're one of those people that does not care, it's your prerogative. Mike, go ahead.
Okay, so the Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, which he co-wrote with Peter Craig, takes place in about his second year fighting crime. And in this film, he ventures into Gotham City's underworld when a sadistic killer leaves behind a trail of cryptic clues as the evidence begins to lead closer to home and the scale of the perpetrator's plans become clear. He must forge new relationships, unmask the culprit, and bring justice to the abuse of power and corruption that has long plagued the metropolis. So before we get into what this movie is, let's first address what this movie isn't, because
For the
this
faint
is like
part.
Because the one criticism that has bugged me more than anything else is that people call this humorless.
Did they not see the whole bit with the thumb drive?
Exactly.
Did they not watch any scene with Penguin in it?
Exactly.
Like, his entire character is based around making you laugh.
Like,
I saw that too, and I'm like, this is the same thing where it's like people are going out of their way to literally lie. Like, if you don't like a movie, that's fine. I'm not going to say that people don't like this movie. I have one of the most hardcore Batman fans ever as one of my best friends, and he hates this movie. And me and him have the same knowledge of Batman, and we both stand on different sides of the fence. But I've seen people just go out of their way to literally lie about reasons why they don't like this movie. Like someone told me there's far too much Bruce Wayne in this film for me to be happy. Bruce Wayne is in this film for like 10 minutes. He's either being either being a dopey nerd in eye makeup in a cave behind a computer, or he's in disguise on his way to be Batman, or he is Batman. He's in a scene in public like 2 times.
Yeah.
Shut up with that nonsense.
That's one of the weirder complaints, but I think now let's actually talk about what the movie is. We'll start by scratching the surface, then dive a bit deeper. First of all, this movie looks amazing.
Same cinematographer, if I'm not mistaken, as Dune.
Yes. His name is Greg Fraser, and he is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very curious to know if red is his favorite color. Because
it might be. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but there's a little bit of red in this film.
Just a little bit.
Just a touch. I love how much red is in this film, and it doesn't have a damn thing to do with Batman Beyond. I try to explain to people, yeah, it's the Batman that's got red in it. No, not this one.
Although it's probably
and
a reference
Nightwing
to,
for a hot second.
It's probably a reference to the red sky that you see in Batman the Animated Series, which, by the way, this movie it may not be like a 1v1 like direct adaptation of the animated universe, but tonally this nails that sort of style.
Mm-hmm. They were missing blimps. That's about it. And like there's even points where like that score, like the Batman theme, it sounds like it's the startup of the Danny Elfman theme, but it just never goes full Danny Elfman. It just stays in the harder bits where it hits more, and they go out of their way to make Batman feel like the most intimidating thing on the planet in this movie.
Literally, when he's introduced, when he's introduced, like that's when you know, oh shit, you shouldn't mess with him.
No, and I love and like Matt Reeves was like every film has I'm in my internal thoughts here. It just had to go something like every film has had 2 of the 4 or 3 of the 4 or 1 of the 4 things that everyone likes about Batman, and everyone always bitches that there was the one thing that was missing. He like literally went, no, I'm getting all of them. And right off the start where it's like, I'm along with all of them. Yeah, this city's really big. I can't be everywhere. But that doesn't mean that those criminals doesn't think behind every corner that I am there. Ah! You just see them all looking at the nearest casted shadow going, shit, shit, shit. Just boot stops. Oh my goodness. That they make him sound like he weighs 1,000 pounds when he goes walking towards someone.
As far as like his actual physique, do you remember those interviews from like a couple years ago about Robert Pattinson
not wanting to work out?
A, that's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
and B, it doesn't matter because the suit basically does all the work.
Yeah, and like I saw someone say something really stupid where it was like, yeah, this Batman's a weakling. He was struggling to push that wood table across the floor, and then freaking Ben Affleck was doing presses with tires. I'm like, that is a 15 by 15 solid oak wood table. That thing probably weighs like 600 pounds. Shut the hell up.
Seriously, you're comparing like a giant wooden table to a fucking tire.
That, I'm kidding you not. I have a pretty generous sized master bedroom in my house. That table is as big as my master bedroom. Y'all are stupid.
But getting back to the cast of this movie, is there a single bad performance? I'm gonna say no.
No. And I'm telling you, I cannot think of his name. Who's the guy that plays Carmine Falcone? I'm blanking hard.
Oh, John Turturro.
John Turturro. He should never do a comedy role again in his life.
Yeah, this performance and just everything about Falcone, short of like actually seeing the rest of his family, which I'm sure they're saving for later, he looks like he's ripped right from the pages of The Long Halloween.
He does. And like my brain is cursed with like Transformers 1 and through 3, John Turturro, where it's always just like he's being peed on, but no, it is motor oil. Blah, 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 blah. He's in a Speedo. Blah, 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 blah. He doesn't get roles because he's known as the 2-bit comedy random wacko guy. And then all of a sudden they're like, he's gonna play Carmine Falcone. I'm like, what in the actual hell is the casting in this movie? I'm like, you get Colin Farrell, and then you go out of your way to make him look like Rupert, like
Rupert Kind.
Rupert Kind. I was gonna say Rupert Friend, but yeah,
Richard Kind.
Richard Kind. You look exactly like Richard Kind. Might be the best thing in the entire film. You get Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle. I was like, you knocked that one clean out of the park right away. Freaking Andy Serkis as Alfred. Perfect. Robert Pattinson, I was like, I'm giving you a chance. I just need to see what it does because I don't even know what they're attempting to do with this Batman. So I don't know if you're good for it or not. I will wait. But like, everyone is off the charts. This casting in this movie is borderline criminal and how well it is done in comparison in the past to other Batman films. Like how, like this looked effortless.
Mm-hmm.
How well everything was.
Everyone from like Pattinson to the twins at the Iceberg Lounge. Like
that same gig 3 times they do the same joke.
And yet it never gets old.
No. Do you know who I am? Yeah, you are getting in here. Goes and gets his brother. You listen to this guy. You know who I am? You listen to this guy. Oh, that's so fucking good.
My favorite is the third time where he literally just sneaks past him, closes the door.
Doesn't even give him the time of day.
He's like,
Oh,
I've been there, done that. Just let me the fuck in.
yep, exactly. Oh, it was great. Everything about it was just the thought. But there is not very often where I see a 3 hour long movie and I'm like, you know what? I wish that scene wasn't in there, or I'm not, and then I'm not saying, man, I wish that scene wasn't in there. Everything in this was great. Like there's
This felt like I was reading a like 6 to 12 issue trade paperback,
Mhm.
complete with the thought bubbles, which really aren't in there that much. Really, just like they mostly just kind of bookend the film,
Mhm.
but it's there just enough to give that sort of film noir aesthetic.
Yeah. Can I state how actively confused I was within the first 20 seconds of this movie? Everything in this film, including the Batmobile, the look of the Batsuit, all the shots we've seen of Carmine, the shots we've seen of Penguin, the shots we've seen of the random grimy streets. I'm like, oh, they're doing a Batman film that takes place in the 80s.
Nope.
Within seconds, there's an LED screen he's looking at, and within 10 minutes, he's pulling out an eye contact, sending it on a scanner, and looking at a recording. I'm like, what? Okay, this takes place in current times. Just Gotham City looks like it's in the 60s.
You know what? That's kind of par for the course because
Yeah.
Gotham has always kind of been anachronistic.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I like that ever since the Burton films, which back then, as much people like, I'm always a defender of like Gotham City used to be New York. And then it got cemented for me in Batman Forever when they literally crashed Two-Face's helicopter into the face of the Statue of Liberty. But like ever since the Dark Knight trilogy, it's been very much basically established that like in films that outside of like the seawall and stuff, that Gotham is Chicago.
And here it kind of feels like both.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I guess it depends on where you're from, because like people from both Chicago and New York have claimed Gotham City.
I'm gonna say you're from New York, so you could even be one of those people. And yeah, I'm gonna have very few negative. One thing I will bring up as a negative as a joke before we get into plot details. I watched it with my roommate and a friend of mine Thursday night, and then we went back last night and watched it again with my roommate and his brother and his sister-in-law. And then we got through it, and then she's like, I like that movie. I'll probably never see it again because she doesn't do well with incredibly like dark movies. Like even The Dark Knight was a little bit too much for her at times. So it's like she loved it. She just won't be able to see it again. But she's like, my one complaint is they could have shaved 45 minutes off that film if, as Bruce Wayne, he walked a little faster.
Okay, that's funny.
Like that is pretty good. I like that. But yeah, man, just they cherry pick such great lore points to throw in here to make a mismatch of stuff. Even not well discussed stuff like the Batwoman or Catwoman and Falcone thing, which it's only if you're reading certain runs that's even talked about as a possibility. Because
I'll say this, like it's been like at least a decade since I read Dark Victory.
There's Dark Victory, and there's also a I had to look it up because I couldn't remember what the hell it was called. The come on now, Catwoman When in Rome. There's a mini series that explores that too.
And we'll talk about that more in a second when we talk about the future. But I was gonna say, like, kind of because my memory is a little bit hazy of Dark Victory, I genuinely forgot about Catwoman's connection to Falcone.
So did I.
So that was like that was kind of my one like but the comics negative.
Yeah. That was with me too, because my friend who just like knows I like Batman and like will go down wiki holes for hours was like, that's not a thing, right? I'm like, no, I think that is. It's just not a common thing. I'm like, that, like, there's some part in there. And then I'm like, no, her boyfriend, her dad's name is Slam Brady. I'm like, no, nope, that's a love interest of hers. I'm like, wait, hold on. And I'm like, her normal parents had like really simple last names. So I'm like, no, there's one run where there was some gangster who was possibly your father. I'm like, it might be Carmine. I'm like, I don't remember. But there is a total lore break that we'll get towards the end of this review where they just went, hey, here's the rule book. Whoa, and just threw it clean out of the window. And then my buddy Morgan was like, okay, you can't tell me anywhere they've done that. I'm like, nope. That is just 1,000% not true, but that's a really cool, like, new lore thing that they could do if they're going to run with in this version.
Well, I'm sure we'll get into that, but
the size of the balls on Matt Reeves to connect those two things. Anyways, but yeah, this is, man, it's so hard because I tell people that are like, yeah, this movie's a lot like Seven. Why is this movie a lot like Seven? I haven't seen Seven. I can't tell you why this movie's a lot like Seven if you haven't seen Seven, because then I'll ruin Seven.
mm-hmm.
It's like Seven and Zodiac, but also it's another Kevin Spacey movie, and Usual Suspects. No, Kaiser Soze. I'm blanking.
That is the usual
suspect. The Usual Suspects, where he's just, nope, it was me. And like he's just sitting in the cafe at the end. I'm like, there's so many very specific polls where you could tell Matt Reeves had a very, very, very finite details in his head where he's like, I want my own version of that. I'm like, you did a good
one. So to put it bluntly, yes, Matt Reeves understood the assignment.
He might have come up with the assignment. At this point.
He didn't just understand the assignment. He wrote the assignment.
He wrote the assignment. He was the one that made the syllabus and then handed it out to himself with the class, and then just to make himself look that much better than the rest of the class.
There are so many things we could talk about, but something else I want to address are the action scenes.
No shaky cam whatsoever.
No shaky cam,
Thank
but
God.
A whole lot of experimentation with lighting, with shadows, with strobe lights.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the car chase might be one of my favorite one of my favorite car chases. Just the way, just like the most it's not a clean sequence. It's very messy.
Mm-hmm.
The way the camera follows both Penguin and the Batmobile. Also, the fucking Batmobile.
I to sound perverse here, I had an erection that you could see in counties away when all of a sudden they turn and all of a sudden you hear stuff like, okay, that's the best on-film Batmobile ever made within 5 seconds, because I felt like that whole room was going to get ran down within the second of that thing turning on. That hum and then that initial shot of the gas to start up the ignition and the blue flame hit out the back of that car. I'm like, okay, yeah, the rest of you suck. I'm sorry. And then it's like, my roommate, who's one of the biggest marks for the Nolan trilogy, was like, that's a regular car and they just outdid the tank.
Yep.
How? Like, I don't know. But that was just like, no, he's going to hunt you down and you are going to pay dearly. Just listening to that. Every little bit, like, atmosphere is the best thing this movie does. It's unreal.
This movie is every bit a vibe as it is a character study, a neo-noir thriller, at times a horror film.
Mhm.
And Batman just happens to wear a cape.
Yeah. Because he hates wearing suits. How I love that this movie went out of its way to go, no, Bruce Wayne hates being Bruce Wayne. He does not want to see anyone. Like, they had a little bit of that in some of the other movies. Like, I really appreciate how you had Christian Bale's Batman falling to sleep during, like, marketing meetings because he does not care. But, like, this is the one where Alfred comes down. He's just like, oh, it's a miracle. You actually have a suit on. He's just like, yeah, I have to go out in public and deal with a case. I'm like, yep, he is literally using Bruce Wayne as a disguise to do stuff for Batman. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I don't get why people take issue with this, for two reasons. One, because it's clear that this is a year 2 story, so Bruce hasn't like figured out how to be Bruce Wayne yet.
No, because he has to come up with who he wants Bruce Wayne to be. When you have to make up a fake identity for your actual identity,
it's not an easy task.
No, because people aren't who they think you are, and you have to act how they think you are. There's not many other people's secret identities that they have to make up their secret identity so that they don't get found out. It's normally they have to just not show it. They have to come up with one.
It is kind of a little bit of subtle commentary on, social media and, celebrity influencers who even when they're presenting themselves as like authentic, it's still a mask. It's still it's still like a version of the truth, not necessarily the truth.
Yeah.
Which is also kind of like the theme of this film is unmasking the truth. So on that note, let's talk about the Riddler.
The Riddler, who is in a shockingly little amount in this movie. It's kind of ridiculous how, when you actually sit and think about it, how little the Riddler's actually in this movie.
I mean, his presence is throughout the entire film, but like the character himself is really just kind of holed up in his room.
Yeah. It's kind of nuts how much you can make that character that scary while only showing him on screen for like 10 minutes every hour.
And my God, Paul Dano probably was the perfect actor to play this character.
I had never even heard of him before this movie. But wow, am I happy. He did great. He is the perfect version of, like, and I even love that for him they didn't do Eddie Nigma, that they for once had someone do Nashton. So I'm like, and everyone's like, well, that's not his name. I'm like, no, that's one of them. They just never use it because it's not the Enigma. And yeah, like, they're like, one of the best acting tests that I've seen between two people is how interesting can you make a conversation between two people. That scene where I'm like, are we going to have Riddler die in this film? Because the Riddler knows who Batman is. They have that big scene at the end there where he's like, the truth behind all of that, and they have that build up where there's just slight horrific music playing the entire time where he keeps saying Bruce Wayne, where he's like, I know who you are. And then when he finally says, yeah, that's the one we didn't get, and the music cuts off, and Batman realizes that he actually doesn't know that he's Bruce Wayne. I'm like, that was one of the most best acted conversations in a film that I've seen.
Also just like the sound design in this film, I think was pitch perfect.
It's ridiculous.
Because there are a lot of moments where you're inside Bruce's head. That scene when the bomb goes off, and he's like knocked the hell back.
Yeah, which somehow doesn't burn his face whatsoever.
I know.
I love that.
Just everything about that scene was perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that subsequent scene adding up again with the like appropriate amounts of like. So in these movies, it's hard to add jokes sometimes without them seeming out of place. And like you said, this movie isn't humorous. When he wakes up and he spaces out, and then they're like, "Oh, whatever," and then that dude behind him goes to grab one of the ears on the cowl, and he shoves those people back, and he's like, "I got you for assaulting an officer. Actually, you have me for an assault on 3." Like, yes. That's great.
And then of course, there's the scene where Batman and Gordon are like, "Hey, you're gonna escape, but first you gotta like make it look convincing."
You got to make it look convincing. And then he texts him, and then he gets back to the bat signal like 15 minutes later. He's like, "You know, you could have pulled that punch. I did."
I swear this movie is like, it's like a buddy cop film, like Trojan horsed into a Batman movie.
It is, and it's like you get the start of Gordon, and this is like year 1 happened 5 minutes before this movie started, because it's like they just got to the point of where they're okay with each other and they're starting to work, but there's still not a whole lot of established trust there, and they make that trust be substantial and be a thing that is proven throughout this movie, so that by the end of it they're like, "No, we're gonna figure this stuff out. I know I can trust you, and you know you can trust me."
So, as of this film, he is simply Lieutenant Gordon.
I have a feeling that either in the next one he's going to be running for commissioner or not, because basically the entire police force that was corrupt is dead. Yeah. And apparently Savage is the guy that the character Savage, I want to say it was the commissioner, is apparently they think a callback to the old 60s Batman show, because apparently there was a chief in there that was named Peter Savage.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's true, but I just saw it on a possible Easter eggs list. But yeah, this whole plot, the whole Rata Alata thing, Rata. What the hell's wrong with you? I'm the only one that knows how to speak Spanish around here. Espanol. There's a difference between L and La. Whoever decided to put Colin Farrell as Penguin deserves the biggest raise ever.
Seriously, I don't think I've seen prosthetics look that good, to the point where try as you might, you cannot see the actor in underneath all that makeup.
No, and like my roommate and his family don't watch a ton of movies, but like, and I'm trying to think to myself, I'm like, what would they know Colin Farrell from? Because Colin Farrell's done a lot of smaller stuff, but they hadn't seen in some of the bigger stuff. They said, I'm like, oh, they're all Harry Potter fans. And then I'm like, hey, do you guys know who that actor is? They're like, no, he doesn't look familiar at all. I'm like, that's the guy who turns into Grindelwald. And they look at me and they go, no, that's not. I'm like, yeah, that is. You're just like, why'd they cover him? I'm like, I don't freaking know why they decided to do it, but I'm happy. And yeah, that whole mystery with the stool pigeon, like, I was immediately like rat with wings. I'm like, how is no one up until the Penguin made the comparison that Batman is the rat with wings? Like, give or take, that was not what he was actually about. But I'm like, how is it taking up until Penguin said it for one of you to go, oh, yeah, that's a very common thing that's said.
I'll chalk that up to Bruce overthinking, because you know, a normal person would be like, duh, of course it's a bat. Of course it's a bat.
Yeah.
But I can understand Bruce being like, rat with wings, stool pigeon. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And One of the weirdest things about this movie that I kind of like is that Alfred kind of isn't his butler, but kind of is, because they clearly have another person working in Wayne Manor.
Yeah, that's new.
I was like, who is she? What does she do? And also, it's not Wayne Manor. It's Wayne Tower in the middle of like Central Park. That's weird.
Yeah, I'm I'm going to give the production designers the benefit of the doubt in that they didn't want to like they didn't want to borrow too much aesthetically from previous iterations.
No, oh, I appreciate it. It was something different, and like him having some place to get away to where he doesn't have to go 15 miles out of town to get back to the Batcave, or if there's multiples of them, like, and it's so out of the way to where you see him driving his bike down a set of steps to get to this thing. Of like, okay, he's taking the most roundabout way on the planet to get down to where this is. I'm like, that's actually pretty smart.
Mhm.
And an old abandoned railway station. Yeah, that's a pretty good little hideout. Because, like, in comics, he's got a bat cave under Arkham Asylum, for crying out loud. Like, he has them everywhere.
Speaking of Arkham, we should probably talk about one of the bigger twists involving Bruce's family.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Martha Wayne's maiden name is Kane. There's a reason why you see Kate Kane and all the name Kane being brought up, though not Cassandra Kane, Kane, like the wrestler. Up until now, it has never been Arkham. Ever. But they looked at me like, are you mad about that? I'm like, no, not at all. They're going to finally do something where they're going to, without doing Flashpoint, make his parents a little bit more interesting and add a couple extra layers of depth to get more stuff out of his parents, whose only importance is dying in an alley, which, oh boy, was I terrified. Oh, I was scared. When they showed that club scene and it zooms to the bottom end of that thing and they showed a pearl necklace, I'm like, Matt Reeves, you son of a bitch. I swear, if you show his parents get shot again, I'm going to be pissed. We don't need this in a 3-hour-long film. But he didn't.
Yeah, I'm glad that we don't have popcorn and pearls for like the billionth time.
Oh, we don't need it. Origin stories for superheroes who haven't had them. People like Batman and Superman and Spider-Man.
Nope.
We know.
We're done.
Lord, we know. My nephew, who is like youngest nephew, who's 5, knows that his parents died in an alley. We don't need it.
Exactly. But I think as far as learning more about the Waynes, my favorite thing about about some of the more deeper cut Batman stories in the comics is when we learn more about like the Waynes and how influential they were to Gotham's history.
Mm-hmm.
And this was all really compelling. The fact that he was that Thomas was running for mayor, and that he's not like he's no saint, because he does have a relationship with Carmine, but he's not corrupt either. He's got like one foot in the threshold.
I was wondering if they were going to like, and I wasn't against it. I was kind of wondering if they were going to go to Joker route where they just made Thomas Wayne a fucking douchebag. I was like, are they going to do that in the actual Batman movie? I'm like, okay, if they pull it off, that's fine. But I'm like, okay, got it. He just helped Carmine once and then tried to just make a person not talk. And then Carmine, being Carmine, went, no, I'm going to make sure I got something over you. And yeah.
On that note, what did you think about the 2 consecutive conversations that Bruce had with Carmine being like, hey, is this true? Followed by Alfred being like, no. let me tell you what really happened.
I liked that. I part of me wishes that Bruce would have been a little bit more, I want to say, apprehensive about immediately trusting what Falcone said. Like he's like when Alfred woke up of like, you need to be honest with me. What the hell happened with my dad and Falcone? I kind of like immediately he tells Alfred, he's like, you've been lying to me for years. I'm like, that was like the one like started that conversation where I was kind of like, man, you've been getting lied to this whole movie. This is the one where you should be like, it's Carmine Falcone. He might not be being honest with me. Like,
I think the dialogue in that scene is a little is a bit clunky, but knowing Bruce, he could have just said that like in a way to pull the correct answer.
Could be. But yeah, I do like that they didn't say that it was a total lie that he asked Carmine for help. I like that is still a part of it where he was like, can you just make sure this guy doesn't say anything? Because I don't want my family to get dragged through the mud. And then immediately he's like, nope, I'm okay with myself being dragged through the mud if I'm going to go confess about it. And then like, if they're actually going to have a thing where instead of just Joe Chill just finding the Waynes in an alley, like that there was an actual hit put out on the Waynes for once, that's different. It's kind of shocking that simple of a thing is that different to the Wayne's death, where it was planned instead of some rando in the middle of an alley.
I mean, both can still be true. Like, like Joe doesn't need to know why he's killing the Waynes.
True. That is true. Even if it was Joe Chill this time, it might not be. Because they went out of their way to go, yeah, man, I really wish I knew what happened. I'm like, not like we're going to revisit this in a further movie. And it's just like, someone asked me, they're like, yeah, and they're talking about Batman Begins. And like, the only thing that I ever mentioned where I don't like about Batman Begins is how his parents die.
Remind me again how
Batman Begins, it's either like that incredibly recently after Bruce Wayne fell and like broke his arm in the well where he finds out the Batcave is and he's surrounded by bats where his dad comes up and rescues him. And then it's shown that for his birthday, they go and take him to a play that is completely centered around bat-looking nocturnal scary as shit creatures.
Okay.
and then all of a sudden his dad looks in shock and goes, oh wait, Bruce is scared. Oh yeah, that's right. He almost broke his arm and fell in a cave of bats earlier today. We should leave out this sketchy side door, buddy. We're gonna go.
See, this is one of the reasons why like I can understand comic fans like not loving like movie adaptations, because you only get so much time that you have to like certain things are like very on the nose.
Yeah, just a touch. I was like, dude, you had his parents take him to a bat-themed play after he just found out he was terrified of bats, and then you're shocked that he's scared. I get it. He doesn't like bats. That's not like, man, what animated series is it where a bat crashes through his window? I can't think of which one it is, but he's in his study and a bat crashes through his window on a stormy night.
Could that be The Batman?
Oh, maybe. It's been a hot minute since I've watched any of them. But anyway, yeah, that's beside the point. We're getting sidetracked of like they're actually putting some substantial I want to say secrecy behind the Wayne's death, where they've gotten both of them, where like even Falcone and Alfred, the only thing they were both completely honest about is they do not know how that night went down. They literally don't know. And that could be either doing it for a future plot point or just leaving it up to interpretation where you don't need to know and you can come up with your own case standard of how you think it happened.
Have they ever actually explored that in the comics? Like, I know the whole point is that Joe Chill is just supposed to be some rando.
I don't like. I'm trying to think in my head if they did stuff in the Court of Owls where maybe I don't know. I don't know if they've made it a gigantic plot point of who killed his parents. Like the only time that they made that a big thing was in my that is in my recent memory is in the '89 Batman film.
Right, where Jack Napier is the guy who did it.
Yeah, exactly. Just so they could call it back, and I'm like, it's always the inciting incident that starts everything.
I think for the purposes of this universe, where we've established that the Waynes are like actual celebrities in this universe,
Yeah,
but also that specifically Thomas and Carmine have a history. Yeah, I'm perfectly okay with like either one of them like pretty much blind assigning a Joe Chill to kill the Waynes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, don't go out of your way to, but if opportunity arises, off him. But he did say that he died the same night that he was going to go best of the police, where you could make it where one of the police officers killed him. Because they were in Maroni's pocket. But yeah, and like this whole, it's like this was the best version of like, I'm gonna get a lot of crap for saying this. I really am. I am one of the few people that, as they went further along, like the Dark Knight films less.
That's fair.
And you and me have had the conversation where we both agree that Batman Begins is a Batman movie, and that the later two are Christopher Nolan films that happen to have Batman characters in them.
Yep, and I stand by that.
Exactly. And like, and I was talking with my roommate, and he's talking about, he's like, well, what do you like about it? I'm like, it's not that I don't like it. It's just that like, when you think about that movie, what is the thing that you think about? He's like, well, the Joker's really good. I'm like, cool. Do you think about anything else?
I think Two-Face gets Two-Face kind of gets swallowed up by the Joker.
Exactly. There's a decent plot in there and all that stuff, but like the problem with it, and I'm okay with this version of it, is it's like they kind of Riddlerified the Joker in that movie. To where it's like, I don't have a plan. I never have a plan, blah, blah, blah. Even though I have about 16 plans going at once the entire time. I'm a dog chasing cars, even though I have a tracer on that car to know where it's going at all times. He had like 5 plans going at once, and it was incredibly upset when all the plans didn't go off. You know who acts like that in comics all the time? The Riddler. Exactly. I was like, it's a very great Joker. It's just that he's 80% Riddler that happens to have makeup and be really kooky. And you want to prove that point? This film! Because the exact Riddler that I say that they kind of made the Joker into is in this movie if his parents were Jigsaw and the Zodiac Killer.
Does it frustrate you a little bit when certain writers accidentally can't tell the difference between the Joker and the Riddler?
It kind of does, because you need to understand where he has some villains that are incredibly similar. He does, but there's differences where you need to go where it's like, and the best version of this, honestly, where you could tell they wanted to make them extremely different, is Batman the Animated Series. Because in a lot of ways, they went out of their way to even talk about how like all these villains had very specific mental disorders. Two-Face, split personality disorder, Riddler, obsessive compulsive disorder, Mr. Freeze, post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, they all kind of based how they acted around like a specific mental deficiency or illness to like show that these people are suffering for incredibly different ways and act incredibly differently. Like Joker, for one instance, like in the middle of an entire I can't remember what the exact storyline is, but he has a baby for some reason. I want to say it's with like Jim's like 3rd or 4th. Jim has like 4 wives that get killed by people, and I think like 2 of them are killed by the Joker.
Oh, are you talking about that scene in No Man's Land?
It might be where he like tosses the baby and then like at them for like to go away, but he shoots the kid anyway. I'm just like, that's the Joker. You don't have like where like in the Dark Knight where it kind of irritates me where it's like, oh cool, yep. I'm waiting for my plan to work out on the boat because they're going to blow that up exactly how I planned it for a couple of weeks now. Oh, we didn't. Cool. I have a third bomb in the bottom of it because I wanted it to blow up anyway. That is what would have happened. It's always like, even if it didn't work out, I'm going to blow you up anyway. It wasn't a, I'm going to wait on the whims of other people type of things. That's what the Riddler is. The Riddler is the person who 9 times out of 10 is his own worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
The few times where he legitimately outsmarts Batman, he loses to Batman because he then goes on to brag and
About-
give out details that makes Batman win.
Exactly.
Then, like, it's another thing where, like, there's runs where they have the Riddler go to Star City to have Ollie compare with them because Ollie's not as much as a super genius as Bruce, and it's some of the best Riddler stuff you've ever seen. They've even had a point where I don't remember what happens. He like gets knocked unconscious, or like he goes into a coma or something. He comes back out, and he like dropped his villainous ways and actually works with the GCPD because he's an incredibly intelligent person. It's like, just don't boilerplate a villain. Don't be like, okay, cool, they really like the Joker, so I'm going to make the Joker work into this plot line. And that's kind of what I mean by it was a Nolan movie that had Batman characters in it. Because it felt like they wrote the plot and then went, well, they really like the Joker, so I got to force feed him in there somewhere. And I put the card at the other movie, so since now that I'm forced to make another one, I got to do it like... And give or take, they do that with Marvel movies now. They very much make the plot and then go, what characters work for it? But they'll dig out characters you've never heard of to fit that role. Taserface, for Christ's sake. Like, they'll make sure they have something that fits it and it doesn't look force-fed. But to the same degree in this movie, they had the plot down, they had every character they wanted, and every character fit in the exact way that where they needed. They had 3 different characters they could mention having wings just to make the one phrase Rada Alada drag through the whole movie.
It's kind of the rosebud of the film.
Exactly. And that was so smart because that was back in the day. Like I was talking with my roommate where if you want a thing, you call him blank man. Like I jokingly put on my Facebook, I'm like, if Matt Reeves wants to make a Kite Man movie, I'll watch it. Like freaking the 10-Eyed Man. Little trivia for you people out there. Guy gets shot in the head and they redirect his what would you actually call it? His ocular nerves out through his fingers to where he has 10 eyes, one on each hand. So he's blind if he's going to punch you or open a door. Batman has some stupid villains.
And we'll get into that in a little bit. There's a few more things we haven't got to.
Oh, absolutely. I had a feeling this was going to be long because I could talk about Batman for a while.
Same. Catwoman
is awesome.
Catwoman is amazing. Zoe Kravitz has never given a bad performance, but
no,
she and Robert Pattinson probably have like the best sexual chemistry out of like any superhero pairing.
Oh, I got real hot and steamy in that theater for the people me watching me when he pins her down on that wood table in the first part of that movie. And it's like that speaking of those two, that's another thing this movie does great. They're like, hey, we might make some sequels. We want to actually do some work to establish some stuff that we could pull from in the next movie. Mm-hmm. Throwing Catwoman in minute 1 is a very smart move.
I didn't want to open this can of worms, but we kind of have to address this. People are racist.
Incredibly.
Even Christopher Nolan rejected Zoe Kravitz for The Dark Knight Rises because she was too, and I quote, urban.
Can we talk about last thing I'm going to mention about the Dark Knight films. Like, I noticed Gwendolyn put this up, and this is not a slight at Gwendolyn at all. She just it's kind of weird to me at certain points. She mentioned that they whitewashed Bane, and they did. They 1,000% did. He needed to be a Mexican. Like, I badly want to see Batista be Bane. I think he'd be great. But
Same.
Nobody, and I mean nobody ever talks about Nolan whitewashing Ra's al Ghul.
Yes.
Ever. And I'm sorry, last I checked, Liam Neeson is Irish. Pasty white boy Irish. Hey, Mike, why don't you tell me the ethnicity of Ra's al Ghul?
He's Arabian.
Thank you. It's almost like he did it then too, but no one ever says anything 9 times out of 10. They skip over it. Do you know why? Because they'll only complain about it most of the time. And again, Gwen has a genuine complaint. She does. And I'm not speaking about her, but 90% of the people, if they don't like the actor, well, yeah, he wasn't the right skin color. It's because Liam Neeson did a really good job. They don't say anything.
Yeah, I
still whitewashing.
I take a lot of issue with that. Not because Liam Neeson didn't do a good job. He did, but that is a major double standard where, because the actor did a good job that they get a pass. No, fuck off with that.
Exactly. And it's just like, you need to call out that stuff. And that's why, again, why I brought up Gwen. She brought that up where it's like everybody praises certain stuff and they never mention that stuff. She's 1,000% right. They whitewashed the shit out of Bane. And I even like the performance, and I'll admit that.
But getting back to Catwoman specifically,
Yes.
because
Catwoman should be urban. Sorry to tell you.
Well, yes.
even without that stupid stereotype they threw on Zoe Kravitz.
I was just gonna say though, like historically, like Zoe Kravitz is not the first African American actor to play Selena Kyle.
No, we have Eartha Kitt.
Yeah, Eartha Kitt. Is Julie Newmar? I don't know her as well as
Julie Newmar. Yeah, she's 100% American.
Okay.
Yeah, American actress. As also a writer, lingerie inventor, and a real estate mogul.
She wears many hats.
I guess.
But yeah, Eartha Kitt.
And also in a lot of interpretations of the animated stuff, they've had her be African American.
Exactly.
Like, was it year 1? There's one of the fairly recently ones where they've shown her be that way, and it's like, what does it matter? It's not like you made Black Panther white.
In fact, having like an African American actress play Catwoman, it adds to her story too, because she's lower class, because her crusade is like against the rich.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
like it adds so many more layers to the character that you wouldn't have if she was Caucasian.
Exactly. It shows some truth to the situations of what's going on, especially in cities like Gotham that people don't believe actually happen. They do. Sorry to tell you. But yeah, she was perfect. Like, again, you want to show sexual tension. Selena Kyle is meant to be a mesmerizingly attractive woman. And I don't know if many of you have looked at Zoe Kravitz lately. She's pretty okay looking. Yeah, she'll do. She's a very, 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 very pretty woman.
Yes, very.
Yeah, and it's like I had to make a joke like 4 to 5 times during the movie. I was like, man, they better be okay with the factor, even though Aquaman and Jason Momoa and what's her face split, she'll still beat your ass because it used to be his stepdaughter. But yeah, like her acting and everything, those two's chemistry, not even just sexually, their regular chemistry was great. Like them both, like when she's looking at him, when he's telling her, he's like, "Yeah, you looked really worried at your house while I was watching you." She's just like, the entire time. Oh, it was good.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Every single interaction they have is perfect. Even as she's like getting set up to to be his eyes and ears. She's
Mhm.
like, what, like, why do I feel like I'm a fish on a hook?
And then she looks up to him. She's all worried that she's not going to get this thing. He looks, she's like, "Look at me. Yeah, it looks good." And like even the scene at the end when they're both on the bikes and they're going down the trail and they have to be assholes and like rev past the other one because they can't have the other one be in front when they're going down the trail. I'm like, that is so perfect. You nailed those two. Oh, it's so good. And like she even invites them to go away with him. Like, come on. Like, I know you got skills, do this. And like they've got a great dynamic to where she does not know who he is, but he knows who she is. I didn't know if they were going to do a reveal and they didn't. I was like, that's pretty smart. You kept one of them still having the identity because you need to have a couple of moments where she's going to have the realization that he's Bruce Wayne and she's going to go, "Are you what?"
That will definitely happen in a sequel.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, she name drops Bloodhaven.
Bloodhaven. Yeah.
If only you could see the smile on my face when she said that.
Oh, I could audibly hear the onomatopoeia of the smile dialogue when that came across. I'm like, Mike is really happy. Nightwing probably isn't even born yet, but he's probably really happy. Oh, yeah. And like, speaking of, I also love how in any of these movies, they always just throw stuff in to make people say things. Like, immediately when I got out of the movie, I'm like, I guarantee you, there's one person who went, "Hey, you know that black kid who was really apprehensive about beating down that guy because he's a good person? He's going to be a Robin." 2 seconds I got out of that film. My whole Twitter feed was nothing but, "No, man, he's going to be Jason Todd. No, you're wrong. He's Tim Drake." I'm like, it's like,
Wait.
pump the brakes for 5 seconds.
About that. Apparently that actor actually is playing Tim Drake on Titans.
Really?
I kind of dropped out of I kind of dropped out of season 3 of that show, but
Okay.
they introduced Tim Drake that season, or maybe they will in season 4.
Okay.
I don't know, but I'll even be honest. I myself was one of those people saying like, he does kind of seem like a Jason.
I know. I just love the fact that in these Batman films, it's always like, huh, that kid's his age enough to where he could be sparring with Batman. I think that kid could be a Robin. I just always like, who's the nearest adult male that Batman could get his hands on?
So someone even tried to say that about the mayor's son.
Oh, the kitty rat. God. Excuse me, Mayor Todd. May we speak? Like they even put. I don't explain, and I didn't catch it the first time I watched it, but like after we went home, my roommate was like, "Who are some people that haven't been in Batman films that you kind of like to see?" I'm like, "There's some oddball ones out there, but I could see them doing it." I was like, Professor Pig. I was like, I kind of wouldn't mind seeing Dollmaker. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, one would be really cool would be Thomas Elliott. And he's like, Thomas Elliott, that's a kind of lame. I'm like, no, his actual name is Hush. And he's like, was that the thing they put up? I'm like, well, kind of. They don't really mention the Elliots at all. Then I explained the situation about how they do the whole makeup and stuff like
Actually,
that. And then the second time I watched it, during that little clip about...
you saw Edward Elliott.
Yeah, I saw it. I'm like, well, son of a... Yeah, that was up 2 seconds before Hush was on screen. I'm a moron. And then I pointed it out to him. He's like, is that? Yeah, that's the thing I didn't notice because I'm an idiot. And then, like, not to be... we're kind of skimping over stuff because a lot of it is detective work and just figuring out where it goes. So there's not like a lot of big action beats and stuff outside the car chase.
The car chase and pretty much a lot of the combat takes place in the Iceberg Lounge, which like that's another thing I just kind of have to stop and acknowledge. We have the Iceberg Lounge.
They did none of these other movies like went, hey, here's this one random hangout that only will get in there if we did a whole movie about that character. Nope. We name drop the Penguin. He is going to be in the Iceberg Lounge. And then they even mentioned 44 Below, like the other club in it. I'm like, you didn't need to talk about that. But it's so cool that you did.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean by the like this is the first time that a Batman movie has felt like a Batman comic because the world feels lived in. Like characters are just kind of here.
Yeah.
Like you know, we have the Penguin. He introduces himself as Oz.
Yeah, exactly. They don't go out of some big thing. It's like, who we have to go meet. Oh, you don't want to meet him. And then they make a big deal about making the Penguin. They're like, no, he's just there. And they're like, oh, we need to go to the Iceberg Lounge. And Batman goes, okay. No one asks what the Iceberg Lounge is to do some expositional dialogue for 5 minutes. They're just like, no, we're going to show you and you'll understand. And no one's going to be shocked that we're going to the Iceberg Lounge. It's like you said, it's there. People understand this stuff exists and they're not purposely going, pay attention, kids. This will be a big deal later. They're just acting like it's there, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Barring like a few exchanges, this movie is really show don't tell.
Yes,
and the few bits of exposition that we have are just like kind of natural exchanges between people who either know each other but haven't seen each other in like a few years, or they're just actually telling them information they need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't need to see like an actual flashback of Thomas Wayne attending to Carmine, because I saw that in The Long Halloween.
Exactly. And it's like, you can literally come up with it because of how well John Turturro talks about it. And that is a better way to show scenes than flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You can explain it as if he's having a conversation, but not as exposition. He's like, and then you stood there and watched from the whole thing from the top of the stairs. I remember your face. It's like, and you could come up with that scene in your head within seconds. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Again, John Turturro, don't do comedy anymore. Man, you deserve so much more than what you've been doing for years. This is awesome.
Now here's a question. Because they don't actually make it clear. Is he dead?
I believe so. Like when he's looking down at him and he's shot in the back and he like drops onto the floor and his eyes close. I believe it was just kind of one of those not well executed death shots, but I'm pretty sure he's dead. Because like they even go out of their way to be like at the end after the seawall and stuff where they're like, if people are going to take advantage of the power struggle now that Falcone's gone, and you see Penguin standing in that top of that like business district building or whatever.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's like it to me it would be kind of stupid if they didn't, if I'm being honest.
The reason I asked is because this actually leads into our next discussion point, which is the future.
Oh, you mean No Man's Land?
Well,
what it should be, I mean.
we'll get there in a second. But okay, you know what? Let's get there now. I've kind of laid out 5 things that I want to see, not just in a sequel, but just in the general Matt Reeves Gothamverse.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 is No Man's Land, but with a caveat. We get either like a prelude or like just the Penguin centric stuff in the Penguin miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can either finish the story in Batman 2 or maybe have that be like the aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, I want the weird villains. Give me Professor Pig, Dollmaker,
Mm-hmm.
Clayface.
Like, man, I said it in that chat. Matt Reeves is the perfect person to do Mad Hatter.
Yep.
You,
He honestly, Reeves is the perfect person to do anything. And I know, well, I don't know, but I assume that at least for the time being, Reeves wants to keep this separate from any other DC properties.
and
But
I
I think
hope it is.
I have a sneaking suspicion that what he meant was he just wants to separate himself from the DCEU so that not if, when this movie breaks records at the box office, they could be like, hey, this is the DC universe now. Deal with it.
Yeah, we'll see. This is one of the things that like this is doing something that I miss about like the mid 2000s when they turned out good. It was just like we have an idea for a trilogy and we're making it.
Yeah, and the
Like,
and the only added bonus is that we're also getting HBO Max series.
It's like
because
yeah. Because why shouldn't you? I mean, at this point, they've also announced they're doing one on Arkham. You know how cool that is?
Point number 3. I want to see a Catwoman spinoff based on, let me get the name of she's had a couple different comic runs, but I specifically want to know the one by Darwin Cook.
What all got done? And I'm not the greatest at remembering writers. Excuse me.
Okay, let me see here if I can find it. Well, anyway, just generally speaking, give me a Catwoman. Okay, it's called When in Rome.
The Falcone one I was just talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would love to see that as like a mini series, which would be perfect because you could even use that to introduce the rest of the Falcone family.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4, do Dark Victory if no other reason than also to introduce the rest of the Falcone family, but also to introduce Robin.
Mm-hmm.
And number 5, I guess number 5 is just fill out the rest of the Bat family.
It is, and that's like you mentioned making a DCU, making like this is DCU extended universe. I've said this where like when Fox had the X-Men, if they would have did their shit correctly, they could have easily had their own cinematic universe just using X-Men. I'm telling you right now, they have the availability to do it. They would make money off doing it if they did it correctly. And it is a well enough established IP to where you could do it where, dear Jesus, you could make a Batman cinematic universe and do split offs with like Birds of Prey, Huntress, Canary, all that. You could do a freaking Nightwing trilogy in Bloodhaven. You could do all of this crap if you just planned it. And they'd be cheap as hell because Batman movies don't have expensive villains.
Exactly. Plus, like with Matt Reeves in your corner, he's worked on things like Cloverfield, Let Me In, the Planet of the Apes movies. So like he can work with visual effects.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why I want to see the weirder villains in the Rogues Gallery, because I know he's not going to have any trouble bringing them to life.
No, and this is more of a thing where the weirder kind of oddball ones would do better. Honestly, because he's doing a thing where he's not scared to make these movies as dark as PG-13 is going to allow him.
Mm-hmm.
So you could do some seedy underbelly stuff to where it's pretty great.
Also, Killer Croc, because
I was deciding if I wanted Killer Croc more or Man-Bat.
I'd be cool with either.
Because like Man-Bat, like Killer Croc is that we've at least gotten in a movie. Like give or take, it wasn't that great. but like Man-Bat is a thing that like barely even gets to show up in animated series anymore. And can you imagine Matt Reeves showing the transformation of Kurt Langstrom into Man-Bat, like with visual effects?
Yeah, that would look so good.
I am having near orgasmic joy thinking about that visual scene going down. But anyway, yeah, like you've also mentioned, you really badly wanted to do Hugo Strange.
Yes. Oh wait. There was one more I forgot to mention. And I kind of took this out of my point number 2, the Court of Owls.
Mm-hmm. Or about how Robert Pattinson and Paul Dano openly said during an interview how they both think it's the coolest Batman comic ever made.
Yeah. Although here's my issue with the Court of Owls. I don't think you should do it too soon, because what makes that story so effective is it builds on like the reader's history of
Batman.
Gotham, like, and Bruce's family.
Yep.
So to do this right, you either have to have planted seeds early on, like as early as this movie. If you start in the sequel or like the Penguin series, like that's okay, because you're still getting them in early.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have to wait until the end of the trilogy, where you turn that into like the next chapter.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay with them doing either the Court of Owls or the Order of Saint Dumas. Just do not do the League of Shadows. Not because I do not like the League of Shadows, but we had an entire trilogy centered around the League of Shadows already.
Exactly.
You can sit down for just a minute.
One more thing before we go. Let's talk about that not post-credit scene, but like
ending stinger.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that they were going to show anyone. And I am one of those people where it's like, man, I like all the Batman characters equally. I like some more than others. But as far as movies go, I would like other people to get the shine that haven't already. Mm-hmm. And I think that is very much a Matt Reeves thing, to where like he still picked one that's been on screen, but it's one that has not been on screen in a while. So that's why he picked, I believe, a big reason why he picked Riddler. And then when which Barry Keoghan, like, and for those that don't know, he's Droog in the Eternals. I was confused at who the hell that was at first, because they have that thing where he's talking with him and he tells him the riddle, what has less value, what increases in value when you have less of them, and it's friends. And then they show the side of his face and it looks very scarred around his teeth region here, and his hair's messed up. He looked very close to the animated series version of Two-Face. I'm like, is that person Harvey Dent? And then I'm like, and I'm thinking in my head, we had a whole movie about mayoral elections, and Harvey Dent's name wasn't even mentioned.
Although, to be fair, I don't think Dent was ever a mayor. He was just a DA.
I know, I get that, but it's like elections, all this. I was like, they didn't even ask his opinion or anything like that. I guess they had the crooked DA, like they could bring Harvey Dent in later on. But either way, I'm like, just around elections, it's really weird that there was no even mention of Harvey Dent in anything. But, and then he starts cackling. I'm like, okay, no, it's the Joker. And then all of a sudden I'm like, it cuts and I'm waiting. I'm like, okay, are they going to show something at the end? And then they don't. They show the question mark and a lot of errata, and then it closes. I'm like, and I audibly said to my roommate, I'm like, I really hope they don't put Joker in the next movie.
I agree. But what if Matt Reeves does with the Joker the opposite of what Christopher Nolan did with Jonathan Crane. You know how like Scarecrow was one of the big villains in Batman Begins, but like you still see Cillian Murphy in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of what he's going to do, because how I found out that's who that was is because I have a Pixel, the Google feed thing always comes up, and it showed an interview where Matt Reeves point blank admitted who it was, what character he was playing, and that he said he is playing the Joker, but he is not the Joker yet.
That's a good answer.
So he is very much that person, but he's not who people would associate as being the Joker yet. There's room to go. It's just showing that, in his exact words, there's already an established relationship, and that he wanted this movie to not be a Batman origin movie, but in his exact words, an origin of the Rogues Gallery.
I like that.
I like that a lot, because he set up Riddler, he set up the Falcone family, he set up the Maronis, he mentioned Hush, he had Riddler, and he foreshadowed Two-Face, Joker, and he's got Catwoman in there. He did a lot of footwork without trying that hard in no time. And he established that Batman has joints, like connections to Arkham, like in actual family ties.
Oh, so that's why he gets to walk in and out of that place.
I guess. It's kind of nuts how much work he laid down without trying that hard.
So final thoughts for at least this video. I never want to hear these three complaints ever again. One, anything involving Robert Pattinson and his association with Twilight.
Oh yeah, I didn't mention that, by the way. Robert Pattinson did great.
Yeah,
I just didn't even need to say anything. It's just that he was just good the whole time. He was just good.
Yeah, I never want to hear people complain about Robert Pattinson. I never want to hear people complain about the lack of humor.
Yep.
And I also never want to hear people complain about too many villains.
Thank you. Because, oh boy, I don't know what one it's in, but there's been multiple Renegade pop culture videos, and I know videos of my own channel where I have gone into near fistful rage about how stupid that fucking complaint is, and it's only ever aimed at movies that do their writing badly. It's not the number, it's the writing. Shut the hell up when you don't know the difference. Captain America and Guardians of the Galaxy or Winter Soldier had 7 villains in both movies. And they were great because they were written well.
Even Batman Begins had Raish, Falcone, Scarecrow, and
Zsasz was in the movie too, and so was Joe Chill. Zsasz was in the movie for 2 minutes.
Jesus.
People don't realize that. He's in the court session when they're going to talk to Joe Chill. Zsasz is getting dismissed from court.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Wow. He doesn't look like Zsasz because he doesn't have the scars, but insane. It's that's what I mean. It's all writing. And any of you that make the complaint 9 times out of 10 don't understand it, because when there was too many villains and they were bad? Spider-Man 3. Why? Because it was written terribly. That's the difference.
Yep.
This movie had 7 corrupt cops. It had Falcone. It had Penguin. It had Riddler. It had Catwoman, who wasn't always with him. And it was all great. And it was a 3-hour-long movie with all of those villains and stuff crammed into it. And it was great. Because, again, say it with me, kids, it was written well.
Exactly.
And also, to answer your second complaint, if you don't laugh at it, that doesn't mean there wasn't humor. Because humor is insanely subjective.
Exactly.
And also, you might have just laughed at it and then said you didn't. Because there's those dumbasses too. Like I said, a person actively complained there was too much Bruce Wayne in this film, which I can't wait till it comes out on something where I can time it at home, because I bet it is under 20 minutes.
See, you're hearing complaints about there's too much Bruce Wayne. I'm hearing the opposite, that there's not enough Bruce Wayne.
I do not want a Batman movie where I have more Bruce Wayne in it than I want Batman. That is not the point of the character as a whole. The character doesn't want to be Batman. Doesn't want to be Bruce Wayne.
Bruce Wayne is the mask. Batman is his true self.
Exactly. And it's one of the things I like best about the character. But yeah, we're gonna head on here. We both liked it a lot. It's the score. It is one of the most well-cast, not just in a Batman, it is one of the most well-casted movies I've seen ever. Like, my definition of a like perfectly casted movie is Snatch, where you got a character because you wanted to fit, you had an exact pinpoint personality you wanted in a character, and you got the person that could fully bring that out of them. And that's like Brad Pitt as the pikey, freaking I can't think of the guy's name who plays Bricktop, but everyone is just nailed to the wall, and that's what this is. The cinematography off the charts with how good it is, and it's just all around. It's great. It is my favorite Batman film now, without question.
I think it's mine too.
Yeah.
And I say this after my second viewing, which and a third one is on the way.
Oh yeah, I'll be watching it tomorrow. I would have watched it tonight, but we have the RPC podcast later tonight, so yeah, but we're gonna head on out of here because me and Mike probably want to get some other stuff done before we record in like
a couple
hours. Yeah. So Mike, where can they find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Captain K42. Check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can find me in all the various Facebook groups just at my name. You can check out Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on Podchaser and the Banana Meter. Listen to all of our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we.
Absolutely. And you can find me everywhere at Organoid Zero, and mostly on my Twitch channel, which I'm going to be doing a lot more stuff with. Basically everything that I put on YouTube might not be the stuff that I'm going to be releasing like months from now, because that's just weird. Like the Fresh Take stuff I might not put on, but like podcasts and stuff that I do, I'm going to put on here just for have more traffic and stuff like that. And with streaming, figuring out more ways to get more activity on my Twitch channel. So yeah, you're going to be seeing more stuff on here where me and Mike are working together, among other things. But yeah, Organoid Zero pretty much everywhere except on basically I don't use Instagram because I don't need to. No one needs to look at my face more than they need to. So we're gonna head on out of here. We'll see you guys next time. See ya.
Peace.